Advocates say South Carolina has one of the highest eviction rates in the nation and one of the worst access to justice gaps in the country. Well, here to share more on their work and how they're carrying the torch for thousands of citizens is Kenya Cummings, Executive Director for the SC Housing Justice Network. I'm so glad you're here because this is a topic that affects everybody. Anybody who pays to live here is affected by this.
Yes, and even if that just means like paying taxes on family land, everyone is impacted by like our rising cost of living.
Yeah, so tell us more about your work.
Yeah, so I'm the Executive Director of South Carolina Housing Justice Network. We were birthed in the midst of the pandemic, like the very early years. So 2020, neighbors got together and were like, how are we going to keep each other in our homes? How are we going to keep our utilities on? And so did a lot of research around moratoriums and shutoffs and hosted a webinar with over 3,000 folks.
Wow.
Spanish translation, making sure it was incredibly accessible. And that's just a legacy that we're trying to pull forward, even though the moratorium is no more and we're not seeing this many resources available for those gaps. So we've just taken up that work and doing things to make sure that folks can stay in their homes. Like building small tenant unions across our local area, also being a part of national campaigns where we have conversations and negotiations around what is habitability standards, what are rental caps, and who's responsible for like maintaining this balance. If folks are getting a great mortgage deal from the federal government, they also should be making the place habitable and affordable.
And I want to dive into some of those things, but you said 3,000 attendees. So needless to say, that shows a bit of interest, and that means that there's a problem here.
It's a huge problem. Somehow my cell phone number has gotten out. And there's not a day that doesn't go by that I don't get a phone call from someone asking really hard questions about what happens. Like, I have an eviction, where can I get rental assistance? What do I do? I'm up to my eyeballs in frustration because I can't kind of figure that thing out. And it's homeowners, it's folks that are in family lands, it's folks that live in trailer parks, everyone is being impacted. So it's time for us to figure out how do we move forward, and the best way to do that, or the way that I understand, is that people closest to a problem are actually closest to the solution.
That's a good way of looking at it. Let me ask you this though: has the state done anything? Has the state put forth any legislation or approved any bills that help tenants, homeowners, landowners since the pandemic, since your organization got started?
You know, that's far and in between. We see like some incredible legislation that's been introduced, some around like income discrimination. So we see that happening often. Like, you might have income, but landlords might not want to take that. We've also seen some legislation introduced around eviction right to counsel for you to actually have access to legal representation. Unfortunately, we have not seen these bills actually progress to the point of law. So what happens is folks can file it with the best intentions, and then we're kind of been in a waiting game around when will someone pick this up so that it becomes a topic that people can weigh in on. We've seen at the State House in the last couple of years lots of reasons for people to come and they'll use their voice around a myriad of different topics. And each time that I've been there, the conversation that's also in the room that's not at the state level making the news is housing. People are there fighting for other rights, but the reality is they're not going home to insecure housing realities.
Right, exactly. So right now, what is anything that you're working on that is advocating for the renter, for the homeowner, for the landowner, to keep them where they are, to make that an equitable and a positive future, rather than seeing people getting evicted and this whole mess?
The first thing that we're working on is eviction right to counsel. Evictions are one of the highest in the country. We are here in South Carolina. Eviction right to counsel would really change a lot of people's reality. Just by having a lawyer introduced, they're able to negotiate, have conversations, remind you of things that you might have forgotten about, so that when you're going into that courtroom space, you're fully represented. You have all the information. Empowered. And right now, we only have that happening in very small parts of our state. So like, if you think about how many counties are in South Carolina, there's only about 3 or 4 counties that have true housing courts set up where there's a lawyer present, where there are folks to help you walk through that. And so then the numbers have been run. There's an incredible report that the ACLU paid for. It's called the Stout Report. It runs the numbers. It lets us know that by investing in this, just one thing, having people have access to legal counsel, that changes the cost of housing courts and filing fees and all kinds of things dramatically. So that's one thing that we're working towards. We're having folks contact their legislator. We're talking through like what are creative ways for people to even understand what eviction is. Because a lot of people don't know that in the state of South Carolina, once you get an eviction, that's kind of the end of the story. That's not like it rolls off my credit in 7 years. It's something that you have to live with.
You have to live with it. Yeah, you do. Well, you do have an event coming up. So this allows more people to come and take part, to be stakeholders in this whole process. State of the South, hosted by the MDC, Monday through Wednesday, February 5th and 7th at various locations. So we'll make sure to put your website up on our screen so that people can sign up and attend and have a voice in this whole process.
Yes.
I want to thank you so much for joining us, Kenya. Thank you.
No, thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. We're back after this.